Meet Dave, the Prime Minister. Clueless? Absolutely. He's more at home with his rubber ducky than running the country. Then there's Pat the cat, a furry Machiavelli with a penchant for chaos and belly rubs.
More treats, more belly rubs, and then the world.
Lisa, the daughter, is a whirlwind of energy. She loves karaoke, hates quiet, and her voice could shatter glass and eardrums. Last, but definitely least, is Jim, the son. His hobbies include napping, snacking, and perfecting the art of minimal movement. And meet Mary, Dave's wife. Clever and witty, she's the voice of reason in the household. Often cleaning up the messes caused by Dave and Pat's antics, Mary has a knack for solving problems in creative ways. This is the Westerners. A family as dysfunctional as a broken umbrella in a hurricane, living it up or down at the most famous address in Britain. And Dave, unknowingly helping Pat in his mischievous schemes. Buckle up, it's gonna be a bumpy ride.
Bert! Bert! The phone screamed at Dave. It was 8 a.m, way too early. Dave stumbled out of bed. He hoped it wasn't his mum again. She always called at the worst times. He picked up the phone. "Hello?" he mumbled. A booming voice answered. "Is this Mr. Dave?" Dave's eyes opened wide. It was the Scottish minister. What did he want? Dave gulped. "Yes, speaking." The minister continued. "We need you in Scotland, lad. Important meeting about the border. Can you make it?" Dave's brain was still foggy. Scotland, border, what was going on? He agreed before he could even think. "Excellent," the minister boomed. "We'll see you soon." The line went dead. Dave stared at the phone. What had he just gotten himself into? Dave scratched his head. This was going to be interesting. He looked down. His cat, Pat, was staring at him intently. Pat had this look on his face, the "I know what you're thinking" look. This wouldn't be easy. Pat always had other plans. Pat had been listening. Scotland, the land of catnip? A brilliant idea formed in his feline brain. This was his chance. He could become a hero, a legend. The cats of the UK would worship him. He just needed to convince Dave. Easy peasy. He rubbed against Dave's legs, purring like a motor. "Meow," he chirped sweetly. "You know Scotland. It's the perfect place to grow catnip." Dave, still dazed, patted Pat's head. "Scotland, catnip? What are you on about, mate?" Pat gave him his best "you know I'm right" look. They both knew Dave couldn't resist those eyes. Pat decided to play it cool. He sauntered away, flicking his tail nonchalantly. "Just think about it, Dave," he purred. The seed was planted, and Pat knew it would grow. Dave, the Prime Minister, and Pat, number 10's resident mousecatcher, embarked on their journey to Scotland. The trip was fraught with problems. First, they had a flat tyre. Then, the car overheated. Every few miles, something else went wrong. What should have been a quick trip turned into a 10-hour ordeal. By the time they arrived, both were exhausted. But the adventure was far from over. The Scottish landscape stretched before them, a mix of rolling hills and mysterious lochs. Dave sighed, glancing at Pat, who was perched on the dashboard, eyes gleaming with excitement. Pat seemed unbothered by the delays. In fact, he enjoyed each hiccup. It gave him more time to dream about the catnip empire he would build. Dave, on the other hand, was less enthusiastic. His patience had worn thin, and he could only hope the rest of their trip would be less chaotic. As they drove through the winding roads, Dave couldn't help but think about the peculiar journey that lay ahead. With Pat by his side, he knew anything was possible, even the most unexpected adventures. Ep2. Dave and Pat finally arrived at the boardroom. Dave began explaining to the ministers why Pat had come along. The ministers, a mix of scepticism and amusement on their faces, listened as Dave recounted the numerous delays and mishaps of their journey. However, it was clear that Dave's patience was nearing its end. Ep2. Before the ministers arrived, Pat saw an opportunity. As Dave was distracted with his explanations, Pat jumped up to the laptop and saw the meeting's discussion and notes. His eyes widened with interest. This was his chance to manipulate the meeting for his catnip plan. Ep2. With nimble paws, Pat began tapping on the keyboard, subtly altering the agenda to include discussions on agricultural grants and botanical research, all cleverly disguised to benefit his catnip empire. He purred with satisfaction, ready to put his cunning plan into action. Gap 2S. Meanwhile, Dave, still oblivious to Pat's antics, continued to address the ministers, hoping to diffuse any doubts about their unusual travel companion. As the ministers settled in, Pat slinked back to his spot, his eyes gleaming with mischief, ready to see how his modifications would play out. Gap 2S. The stage was set. The boardroom was now a battleground of wits and wills, and Pat was determined to come out on top. Little did Dave know, the real adventure was only just beginning. Gap 2S. The meeting progressed, with the ministers diving into the altered agenda. To Dave's surprise, they seemed unusually interested in the discussions on agricultural grants and botanical research. As they read through the modified agreement, Pat's clever insertions went unnoticed, seamlessly blending into the official jargon. Gap 2S. After much deliberation and debate, the ministers nodded in agreement. The deal was sealed, and Pat's catnip empire was on its way to becoming a reality. Overjoyed, Pat let out a triumphant meow, drawing everyone's attention. Gap 2S. One of the ministers, amused by the feline's enthusiasm, commented, "What a delightful cat you have there, Dave." Dave, beaming with pride, responded, "Ah yes, that's Pat, my chief mouse catcher and a loyal companion." Gap 2S. Little did Dave know, Pat's intelligence far surpassed simple mouse catching. With fiendish plans already in motion, Pat was steering events from the shadows, weaving his destiny with a cunning only he possessed. Gap 2S. The room echoed with polite laughter and chatter, but beneath the surface a master plan was unfolding. Pat's eyes gleamed with satisfaction, knowing that his greatest adventure was just beginning. Gap 2S. As Dave and Pat left the boardroom, the weight of the day's events slowly lifted, replaced by a sense of accomplishment and relief. The car ride home was filled with laughter and light-hearted banter. Dave, still buzzing from the successful meeting, couldn't help but chuckle at the thought of his cunning cat playing such a pivotal role. Gap 2S. "You know, Pat," Dave said, glancing at the feline in the passenger seat, "today was quite the adventure." "Who knew a cat could be such a lucky charm?" Pat responded with a knowing purr, his eyes narrowing slightly as if to say, "You have no idea." Gap 2S. The sun began to set, casting a warm golden glow over the countryside. Dave's thoughts drifted to the future, imagining the possibilities that lay ahead. He was grateful for Pat's companionship, never suspecting the true extent of his cat's ambitions. Gap 2S. Once home, Pat leapt out of the car and made a beeline for his favourite spot by the window, where he could watch the world go by and continue plotting his next move. Dave, meanwhile, headed to the kitchen to make himself a cup of tea, the events of the day replaying in his mind. Gap 2S. As he settled into his cosy armchair, Dave sighed contentedly, blissfully unaware of the grand schemes unfolding in Pat's mind. Little did he know his feline friend was far from done. The wheels of Pat's master plan were already in motion, and the adventure was only just beginning.